Yevgeny Prigozhin, leader of Russia's Wagner mercenary group, sat in his office, fuming with anger. He had just received a report that his fighters were running dangerously low on ammunition, and he blamed Moscow's military leaders for the heavy losses suffered by his troops in Bakhmut. Shoigu! Gerasimov! Where is the ammunition? They came here as volunteers and die for you to fatten yourselves in your mahogany offices, Prigozhin shouted. He picked up the phone and called his contact in the Russian Defense Ministry. I need ammunition for my men, and I need it now, he said. Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu sighed on the other end of the line. Mr. Prigozhin, I assure you we are doing everything we can to supply our troops on the front line. We cannot give special treatment to your mercenaries. Prigozhin slammed the phone down in frustration. He knew he had to find a solution before his fighters were wiped out. Later that day, he met with Kolgen Mikhail Mizintsev, the butcher of Mariupol, who had recently been dismissed as logistics chief. I need your help, Prigozhin said. My fighters are running low on ammunition, and the defense ministry won't give us any more. Mizintsev nodded. I can help you, but it won't be cheap, he said. I'll pay whatever it takes, Prigozhin said. Mizintsev smiled. I thought you might say that. I have some contacts in the black market. I can get you the ammunition you need, but it will cost you twice the normal price. Prigozhin sighed. He had no choice but to agree. Meanwhile, US-based military analyst Rob Lee was closely following the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. He had just received new intelligence that more than 20,000 Russian soldiers had been killed, and another 80,000 wounded in fighting in Ukraine since December, and half of the dead were from the Wagner group. Lee knew that the lack of ammunition was a major issue for the Wagner fighters. He tweeted, Wagner's latest complaint of shortages likely reflects Russia's defense ministry rationing ammunition ahead of Ukraine's long-anticipated counteroffensive. Russian President Vladimir Putin was not pleased with Lee's tweet. He called Defense Minister Shoigu and Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov into his office. I want to know what's going on with the ammunition situation in Bakhmut, he said. Shoigu cleared his throat. Mr. President, we are doing everything we can to supply our troops on the front line. The situation in Bakhmut is difficult, but we are managing. Putin turned to Gerasimov. What about the Wagner fighters? Why are they running low on ammunition? Gerasimov shifted uncomfortably in his seat. We are rationing ammunition across the board, Mr. President. The Wagner group is no exception. Putin nodded. I want you to increase the supplies to the front line, including the Wagner group. We cannot afford to lose any more soldiers. Back in Bakhmut, Prigozhin was relieved to receive the shipment of ammunition from Mizintsev. He knew he could count on the butcher of Mariupol to get things done. We're not out of the woods yet, Prigozhin said to his men. But with this ammunition, we have a fighting chance. The Wagner fighters held their ground, thanks in part to the ammunition supplied by Mizintsev. As tensions escalated between Russia and Ukraine, Yevgeny Prigozhin was growing increasingly frustrated with the lack of support he was receiving from Moscow's military leaders. He decided to reach out to U.S. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby to vent his frustrations. Mr. Kirby, I am tired of being ignored by the Russian Defense Ministry. My fighters are dying in Bakhmut because we don't have enough ammunition, Prigozhin said. Kirby listened patiently. I understand your concerns, Mr. Prigozhin. But the United States cannot get involved in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Prigozhin slammed his hand on the table. I don't need your help, Mr. Kirby. I need the help of my own government. They sent us here to fight, and now they are abandoning us. Meanwhile, Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov were meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss the latest developments in the conflict. Mr. President, the situation in Bakhmut is dire. Our troops, including the Wagner fighters, are running low on ammunition, Shoigu said. Putin leaned forward in his chair. What can we do to solve this problem? Gerasimov cleared his throat. Mr. President, we could increase the supplies to the front line, but we must also consider the wider implications of the conflict. We cannot afford to escalate tensions with the West. Putin nodded. I understand your concerns, General. But we must also support our troops on the front line. I want you to find a solution to this ammunition shortage. Later that day, Prigozhin received a call from Shoigu. Mr. Prigozhin, we have heard your concerns, and we are working to address the ammunition shortage in Bakhmut. We have increased supplies to the front line, including the Wagner fighters. Prigozhin was relieved to hear the news. Thank you, Minister Shoigu. We appreciate your support. The conflict in Bakhmut continued for several more weeks, with both sides suffering heavy losses. But thanks to the increased ammunition supplies, the Wagner fighters were able to hold their ground. Prigozhin knew that his men would not have made it without the support of the Russian government.